episode of Let's Talk Deer, brought to you by Grandpa Ray Outdoors, owned by Mr. John O'Brien. John's a Midwestern guy. He's around the Madison, Wisconsin area. He's been an agronomist for over 29 years. So he knows seed, he knows soil, and he knows what white-tailed deer need. John has a large seed company, Grandpa Ray Outdoors, but also he's in educating. He's one of the best educators, seminar, platform speaker, communicator for soil, water, and cover. The soil brings the food, the water hydrates, and the cover keeps them safe. So that's what whitetail needs. So any questions at all about seed, go to grandparrayoutdoors.com. Let's Talk Deer does receive compensation from Grandpa Ray Outdoors for mentioning him on my show. Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, and it's March 31st. And yes, I know the whole country is hurting, and I just want to say thank you to all the first responders, all the people on the battle lines. My daughter works in the hospital in California, and she's working as much as she can work, and so I just want to say thank you to all the people that are putting themselves in harm's way, because this is a flat-out war. With that said, we're heading up to South Dakota, and we're going to visit with an alumni. Sallie Doty is from Pierre, South Dakota, and she had a heck of a season last year in the form of hunting, and also she's a triathlete. And Sallie, it's just great to have you back on the show.
Thanks for having me back, Bruce.
Well, in the warm-up, we're talking about a lot of different things, but you did have one heck of a season, and so let's start off with 2019 and share with the listeners how you planned this all out. I know the outcomes were fantastic, but did you have a plan of how this was all going to come together, or was it just, hey, let's go hunt this weekend, and all of a sudden you were successful?
You know, going into the 2019 season, I did a lot more preparation than I had in the past. I for sure was down at the archery range week after week after week, and I had never done that. I was trying to actually build more shoulder strength in my right shoulder for swimming, and so I just found more time kind of for myself last summer and into the fall, where I was preparing a lot more, shooting my guns a lot more, and I think going into the 2019 hunting season, I was ready to go. I actually did end up, the first hunt I went on was an antelope hunt, and I did do that one solo by myself out on some public ground and about an hour and a half away in west central South Dakota. So I was kind of preparing maybe for that a little bit too, because I knew I was going to be by myself, and there were some things when you go out on a hunt by yourself that you got to do and get prepared. So I think this year was just a testament to the fact that I was able to be just a lot of practice throughout the summer, and I was well prepared going into the season.
Now, did you have to get a special tag for antelope hunting, or is it over the counter?
You have to apply for a rifle tag, and it usually is like every other year that you get a buck tag. I think I might have got 2 in a row, so I probably won't get one this fall. But it's an application process, and it does take, like I said, about every other year that you get a tag, and I think, I'm not quite sure on this, I think possibly the out-of-staters can apply for it too. We just don't have the numbers. They're starting to come back here, but it's one of my favorite forms of hunting is rifle antelope hunting, so that was probably my favorite hunt of the year, and the weather was nice too, which kind of helps with that. It wasn't too blistering cold like it can be later on in the season.
Now, are we talking about East River or West River where you hunted the antelope?
That would be West River. There's like a few counties you can hunt East River, but the majority of them are West River. That's where you find the majority of the antelope. So it was a couple counties over from where I live in Pierre.
So, folks, if Pierre's right on the Missouri River, and so if you live east of the Missouri River, it's the whole state is East River. If you live west, it's West River, correct?
Correct. Yep. I'm not from South Dakota originally, but there's kind of quite the divide between the East River folks and the West River folks. There's a kind of a battle there, and I just am kind of stuck in the middle in Pierre, and I like both places, so I don't have a preference either or.
Well, I hunted at, I believe it was Jackrabbit Stagecoach Ranch or something. I got invited out there one year, and that by Pierre, and we shot geese in the morning and then caught walleyes in the afternoon, in the evening, and then we went pheasant hunting right after lunch. So it was a trifecta for 3 days. It was
Oh, wow,
amazing.
that sounds nice.
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing, and this is date myself, but this was when you get at the end of a windrow or something, and literally 100 or more pheasants would fly over your head, and I remember just standing there going, oh my goodness, you know, it
Wow.
was.
Yeah, I think some people call that the real outdoorsman South Dakota triathlon. If you're, I think the three or whatever, hunting and fishing, and then going back to hunting again.
Yeah, it was amazing, but I had really good memories of that. And there is some along the wing dams on the Missouri. There's some really good walleye fishing. I know that. And the hunting, you watch them come off the water, and they climb up to the bluffs, and then you pound them. And it's
Yeah,
pretty.
it's really.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, well, Pierre area is really just kind of an outdoor or sportsman's mecca and paradise between the fishing, the waterfowl hunting, the bluffs, with mule deer, and then the little bits of trees on the river bottoms with whitetail. It's really just kind of a fun little hidden gem.
Yes, it is, and if you've never been out there, take a vacation this summer once we get off sheltering in place or staying in place, and head out there. If you're any place close, I sure as heck endorse the area, and if you're a sportsman, grab a couple of buddies, and once we can social distance within 5 feet or 3 feet, so we can get in the truck, head out there. So there's a plug for South Dakota. Are you still there, Sallie?
Yep. Sorry, I just didn't know. Didn't want to cut you off.
No, I was just finishing that up. And why do you think South Dakota, is, basically a sportsman's paradise? We just mentioned goose hunting and pheasant hunting and upland game hunting, deer hunting. It's all there.
Yeah, I kind of think about that sometimes too, but we have and I won't get back to my history degree days, but I wrote my thesis on the barbed wire and the American expansion westward, which could bore you for many hours. But when you hit that kind of right where Pierre's at, where you hit the center of east meets west, I think you just, between the two, you come to a point where you've got all the flora and fauna of the east and all the flora and fauna of the west kind of converging in one center point. And just maybe, I don't know if a lot of people just don't know about it. But I didn't know about it, certainly growing up. I grew up in eastern Minnesota, just south of the Twin Cities. And it was similar to this because I lived on the Mississippi River just a few miles away. So now I actually live probably about 600-700 yards away from the Missouri River. And it wasn't anything like it is here. And I don't know if it's necessarily because of it's semi-arid, and you've just got different kinds of animals. And it's not just it's a little bit drier here, but there's also rain. So I think it's just kind of a mishmash of everything, and there's just not as many people here as there is back in the Twin Cities. So I think that's why there's just an abundance of wildlife, which is great to see.
I just go back to when I was living in Wisconsin, and we'd head out west for the annual mule deer and antelope hunt in Wyoming. And as soon as we hit Pierre, then we felt we were out west.
Mhm.
And before then, it was all the same as, and then you hit that, and just something changed, and that was always one of our goals, is to get past Pierre as soon as we could, so we can get in. We felt like we're into the hunt then.
Yeah, you definitely stop seeing trees about the time you get through Pierre, and it's something that I grew up kind of in a more foresty area, and you come here, and I forget now when I go back home. I'm like, these trees are in the way. I totally forget that I like just to see the open countryside and to see the prairie grasses, and then when you say the tree, by the turn, everybody knows what tree you're talking about because it's the one tree on their property. So,
yeah, you can see it from 100 miles away. Not really, but
yep.
5 miles away you can.
Oh yeah, certainly about 5 miles. Yep, you turn out the tree. Okay, there's the one tree. You take a right. It's not hard to find things here.
That's funny. So when you're hunting antelope, let's get back to that. Now, what kind of rifle do you use?
I used last year the Savage 6.5 Creedmoor. It's a 110 long range hunter. I did just get a PRC, a 6.5 PRC a couple weeks ago. So that's going to turn into my new antelope gun. But I did use the Creedmoor this past fall.
Boy, that's sure a popular round. And why do you think that is?
And it's kind of, and now the PRC is becoming popular too. You can kind of read about it. I used to shoot a 308 before I shot the 6.5, and I think just the speed behind the bullet and even the PRCs are faster than the 6.5 Creedmoors. And we were just doing some comparisons. The bullet green is the same size for the 6.5 Creedmoor as it is for the 6.5 PRC. But it's just, if you look at the feet per second on the back of the ammunition box, you can kind of do some reasoning there and determine just the size of the bullet even behind it. Not the actual, obviously, size of the grain of the bullet, but the casing in and of itself. They're just becoming smaller, more powerful. I can't tell you why, if it's just kind of why are people buying all the toilet paper right now? Sometimes people just hear something's good and everybody flocks to it. But I think that it's a great shooting gun. Mine's fairly lightweight. And, when you're hiking around quite a bit, and I'm not hiking through mountains. I'm not claiming to be. These are hills and bluffs, but it can be an added weight on your shoulders too. When I had that 308, it was a heavy machine.
Yeah, my go-to antelope was a Ruger number 1 25-06, and I just love that. That's a 400, 500-yard gun if I want it to be, and I like that. And the more I read about the 6.5, I'm going, I really need one of those. I'm going, no, I don't. I really don't.
Yeah, you could be like my husband and just get every caliber because you think you need it, but he likes to collect them all.
Well, and that's good, but my station in life, my safe is full, and I'm probably. Well, I know I'm not going to trade it out. I could rebarrel it. I went to my gunsmith. He said, I'll rebarrel it for you, And I said, yeah, for the cost of a new gun. He says, well, yeah, because you want a custom barrel. And oh, boys and their toys. Girls and their toys, too. That's for sure. So, okay, so we wrapped up the antelope. Now, what did you do with the antelope? Did you break it down yourself and process it yourself? Or how did that turn into meals?
Yeah, so after I shot, and like I said, I went on that hunt by myself. My husband was hunting a few counties northwest of where I was at, and so he was like 3 hours away. So when I was done, shot, and I tried to do my best to take pictures. They weren't the greatest pictures when you're by yourself. So I got some photos, and then I went ahead and quartered out in the field. And I wasn't actually, by that point, when I had shot him, I was on my way back to the vehicle because it was kind of low visibility that day. And so I wasn't too far, but probably about a mile away by the time I had to pack him out. And then I'd made 2 trips to the vehicle, brought the meat back into Pierre, and then we went ahead and we always make steaks with the back straps or the tenderloins, and we go ahead and cook those up. And then we don't really turn anything into jerky or burger. We just pretty much cube it up and eat it and do a lot. I know these days people all have air fryers, and we just got one a couple months ago, and it's great to cut those antelope chunks into just, like just little pieces and then put them in the air fryer, and it just makes chislic, which is a big South Dakota delicacy here. Never heard of it till I was here, but that's what we make is usually chislic out of it.
So when you say you chunk it, so you take everything off the bone and just vacuum seal the meat?
Yeah. Whatever we're not going to eat. You don't get a whole lot of meat off of an antelope for 2 people that want to eat it as fast as possible. So, we do end up sealing some up and putting it in the freezer, but we eat quite a bit of it within the first week and then vacuum seal the rest up and put it in the freezer for later time. But as of today, being that hunt was about 6 months ago, we were out of the meat within a month.
Well, that's great. And who taught you how to do all this?
Well, I have to give all the credit to Ben Doty, who's my husband. He's taught me basically everything that I know, and I've learned some things through obviously podcasts and online and through asking people questions and some books. But most everything I have learned has been through him, and he's taught me along the way. And now that I think I'm to the point where I can do a lot of this on my own, we kind of sometimes it's probably safer that we're not together when we're doing stuff, because we get a little testy sometimes if we're hunting together. So some of that social distancing back then was probably a good thing for the two of us to be hunting in different parts.
That's funny. That's funny. So, what advice do you have for a lady, for a woman who says, "Hey, I'm ready to go DIY solo, even antelope hunting." And antelope hunting, in my opinion, is just a great hunt because typically the weather's good, the animal isn't that big, so you can quarter it up, break it down, throw it in actually a day pack, and hike, a mile or two if you had to, throw it in the cooler, and processing it, is relatively easy in doing what you said, breaking it down, wrapping it up, and within a month most of it's gone. So what advice do you have for some woman says, well, gee, how could I do that?
So the first thing I did is, as I was pretty familiar with the ground, I'd hunted it for a few years. So if you're going to go somewhere and you're going to be on your own, make sure you're familiar with the area. And if you're not exactly familiar with the area, go out and scout before, understand your maps with GFP and onX and where you can and can't go, obviously. I did go out, and I was already familiar with it this year, so I did go out the week before and scouted, and I found 3 different groups of antelope, and I just kind of snuck in with my binoculars, took a look at them, and then kind of snuck out, which was equally almost as fun as hunting sometimes, is just sneaking up on them. And I made sure, okay, we've got these groups out here. I'll come back next week. Another big thing is know how to use your weapon, because you're not going to be able to turn around and ask your husband, this happened or that happened, and you just got to figure it out. So, and that takes a while to understand your weaponry and to know, and that was my goal this summer. I think I had talked about it in the last podcast, was you really need to know your weaponry, and when something goes wrong, how to fix it, or at least how to fix it safely, or get out of the situation and be okay. Another thing that I did do besides scouting is always, make sure that people know where you're at. So like my husband obviously knew where I was. He knew the ground just as well as I did while he was someplace else. So if something were to happen, he knew where to come find me. There's cell service out there too, so not great, but if there was an issue that, we would be able to contact each other. But I think first and foremost is understanding the ground, and then also understanding your weaponry. And when you feel comfortable with both of those, I think it's time maybe you could just do a short day hunt by yourself or scout by yourself, and kind of start with that. And then if you feel like, yep, I can get this whole thing down, Ben and I kind of just practiced and drew pictures of how to quarter, and I kind of knew how to do it already, but we kind of walked through it again, watched some videos. He explained some more stuff to me, and I figured I could figure it out, but just to educate yourself right before, understand how everything works, and then you'd be pretty proud of yourself once you get it all done, because you had to learn a lot going into the whole process.
If somebody wanted to reach out to you, how would they do that? What's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, sure. I'm on Instagram. It's just Sallie, and spelled SALLIE _ Doty, DOTY, and you can shoot me an inbox message there. I also have an email that it goes right to my phone, so I'll be highly responsive to it, and that's just salliedoty@gmail.com. No spaces or anything in there. And I'm also on Facebook, so I'm on quite a few different platforms. If you need to get a hold of me or you have any questions, certainly willing to help out in any way that I can to help new people or people who just have questions in general have a better and safer hunt.
So all the while you're getting ready for hunting season, you're also a triathlete. So how did those two sports, work together and help you become a better hunter?
Yeah, so right now, with it being the end of March here, and I can't swim just because pools are shut down and I think beaches are closed and all that kind of stuff, but I've been biking inside and running, so I'm kind of right in smack dab, coming in the middle here of my training season next month, and basically season will start in June. That's pending if races are still going on. I don't know yet. They'll wait to declare that till later. But my season would start hypothetically in June, and then goes through September. And it's kind of funny because usually the last triathlon, the next day is hunting season. So throughout that summertime, I'm just training hard, working hard, running 30 to 40 miles a week, biking well over 100, swimming probably 3-4 miles a week. So I'm doing all this kind of training, and then also shooting my bow at night if I have time, to get ready for hunting season, for being able to hike around miles and miles on end. And then I think they kind of go hand in hand pretty well. They're kind of completely opposite sides of the spectrum, I guess, but it's still physical activity. So I think that that triathlon season leads up really well into hunting season. And then I kind of actually take a break right about the middle of September, or once the weather the mornings kind of start later and all that kind of stuff. In the end of September, I'm pretty much kind of done biking outside. And then I'll just take about a solid month off of not doing anything to let my body kind of recover and recoup. And by that time, it's hunting season, so I'm in full force enjoying archery and all that kind of hunting, and some waterfowl hunting as well. So that's how I kind of balance the two. The only thing that interferes with them would be fishing a little bit in the summertime, and then possibly like early season deer season archery here.
So you're a pretty busy lady. Plus, you do have a full-time job, in the financial arena. So, balancing everything you do, it's pretty interesting. At least it is to me, because you are an active person.
Yeah, I'm an investment professional. I work for my dad's financial advising firm, Collins Wealth Management. In between that and being active every morning, and then getting prepared for hunting, it's a lot. But I'm now no stranger to having a regimented schedule and to get things done on time and to move on to the next activity, since of my college swimming days and college days. So it's nothing new. I think I kind of like this schedule and this format, and something always going on, something to accomplish, small goals here and there. I think that's how I work best.
So let's go to the next hunt. We start off with antelope. Then what was up next?
Well, the next one wasn't necessarily a hunt. It was a fishing trip. And we went down to Yankton, South Dakota, which is the Gavin's Point Dam down in the southeast portion of the state. And we were snagging paddlefish, which has kind of become my new favorite. I wouldn't say I like it more than antelope hunting, but it's quite a hoot, and it's a lot of fun. Basically, these paddlefish are these giant fish. They look prehistoric. They're in the Missouri River, and I think they're in a few other rivers, but they might be protected. In South Dakota, you can get a snagging tag. So you snag for these fish with about a 3-ounce weight with a treble hook, or 3 to 5, depending on how much wind there is and how high the water is. But you go out and you snag, and there's a certain slot limit to keeping a fish, and the fish are measured from the eyeball, which is hard to see in the pictures if you've seen one, the crease in the tail. And if it's under a certain amount, in between a certain amount, you have to throw them back, because those are the breeding fish, and they want them to thrive and survive and make more of the paddlefish. But I actually caught one on the over the slot, which I've never done. It's always been under the slot. And so this year I had quite the fish that was over the slot on Sunday morning at the first cast of the day down there. And I fished for 13 or 12 hours on Saturday. So I was wrecked and beat that day. And I was so happy that I could get it down right away on Sunday morning, and we could just head back to Pierre.
Now, is that something that you keep and eat, or just catch, photo, and release?
Yes, we eat them. They're pretty good fish to eat. They kind of have a meat that's similar to maybe like a pork chop. It's a tougher white meat. I don't want to say tougher in a bad way, but it's firmer than walleye or some of the panfish. And so we took pictures, and then we brought it back up to the cleaning station, and they had a surveyor when I got it out of the water who did all the tests and measured and weighted and all that kind of stuff on the fish. And then we were able to process it, put it in the cooler, and then head back to Pierre, and where we ate it over the next few weeks. And then we packaged some of it up and froze it. But you don't get nearly as much meat off of it's not a little fish, but you think you get a lot more off of something like that. But there's only so much meat even on those fish too.
Now, was that a 20-pound, 30-pound, or larger fish?
So, and I sent you the photo. It was, yeah. So the measurement, I believe, and I'm trying to recall off the top of my head, I believe is 49 inches from eyeball to tail. That doesn't include the nostrum or the nose with the tips of the fins. So it was 49, 49 and a half, something like that. And then the weight was 44 pounds. So as you can imagine, eyeball got pulled in. I'm 135.8. You know, I'm not tiny, but I'm not huge either. So I'm mostly all legs for running. So when something top heavy tries to pull me in the water, it wasn't a pretty sight to see.
Oh my goodness! Did you have to put your butt on the ground on the shore?
Well, what happens is, you know, you're on these rocks because the river was so high last year, and it's kind of uneven as it is. And I cast out, and I hit something right away. And the guy next to me was like, you know, he was already fighting a fish. And these people, I mean, that sport is like the anti-social distancing. You're like 5 feet away from the next fisherman, all the way down. And so he could kind of tell that I had something on, but he had something on. And so I just sat down because I knew if I stood up, I was going pretty much over. I sat down and then held my rod and reel as close to my kind of, you know, my ribs as I could and just kept reeling, you know, and then all of a sudden it'd give out a little more drag, kept reeling, give more drag. And I just had to sit down. And my husband's like, do you have one on? And he thought I was just kind of fiddle-faddling around, you know, playing with something. And I'm like, yep, I got one. I got one. And people use like those it's like a noose that they use for hogs. They'll put it through the nose and then get them out of the water that way. And I knew it was a bigger fish, but they're so hard to tell because some people catch these giant fat ones and they look like, oh, you're over the slot. And then you go to measure them and they're under the slot and they're throwing them back. And it's like, wow, they looked a lot bigger than I thought, but they were just really, you know, fatter. And then mine was like a rocket, you know, so I was like, get that out. And all of a sudden I was 45, 46, 47. I'm like, oh, I'm good to go because I think the slot limit's 45. And I took my fish and walked right out of there. It was already done for the day.
So you have to get a tag. Is that correct?
Yep.
And so can non-residents get that or just residents?
I think so. I again, with any of these questions, since I'm not a non-resident, go on our Game Fish and Parks site is very user-friendly. I know some of them are not. I've been on some that I don't know where I am at, but ours is very user-friendly that will explain when non-residents can apply for things and if they can. I'm pretty sure they can. And there's, I want to say, a few thousand tags given out for Gavin's Point paddlefish.
And there's no paddlefish up by Pierre?
There are. They stocked them a few years ago, I believe, and they're going to continue to do it. But by the time they have a season, it won't be for several years, just making sure, you know, everything thrives and gets bigger, which is good. I know people have caught them just kind of on accident, and you see them and they're teeny tiny and they throw them back in. So they're up here. They just are going to take a little while before we can fish them. They're really good for the environment. They filter. People think, you know, they got these huge mouths, but all they do is open their huge mouth and they'll go by the dam. They'll filter all the zooplankton and some of the stuff out of the water, and that's what they eat.
Interesting.
Yeah, they're just a weird prehistoric looking creature. Some places call them spoonbill. Have you ever seen a spoonbill? Otherwise, we say paddlefish. They're just a unique looking creature. If you've never looked one up, go ahead and look one up online or go to the GF&P site and look under the resident fishing for paddlefish section, and you'll be able to see some interesting photos.
That's great. So we finished up with paddle. So you drew an antelope tag and a paddlefish tag. What was up next?
That next weekend, I think it was the next weekend or 2 weeks later, I went out to where we archery hunt, and I wanted to shoot a doe just because I had always wanted to do the Donate to Sportsmen Against Hunger. I had never done that. And so I got a tag, just an archery tag for a doe. And that evening, does are pretty prevalent. I'm not big on shooting a lot of does, but I wanted to do this as a service for our community. And so went ahead and shot a doe with my bow that night. And we got her processed and brought her into the shop where we have in town that, you know, you can go ahead. And so she was already processed pretty quickly and then given to our local food pantry. So that was what we did with the doe.
This is Bruce Hutchin with a special message about my relationship with Burner.com. Burner HD is a non-lethal pistol that's available now on the web at Burner.com. If you go to the web and use my promo code LTD 2020, you're going to get a 10% discount on all Byrna product. So again, Let's Talk Deer has a discount promo code LTD 2020 for all Byrna product. Go check them out. Now, was that a spot and stalk, or were you in a tree stand or blind? How'd that come together?
Yeah, I was in a tree stand. I was in the same tree stand I shot, well, everything I've shot on that property pretty much. So my deer from last year, and then deer later on, my whitetail from this year. So same tree stand and tree row, kind of near some crop, near some water, kind of the edge effect. And so that's where I was.
So is that your go-to stand when you want to harvest something?
Yeah, go to whitetail archery. Now, if you've got my go-to mule deer rifle, that's a different place. Or go-to, it's kind of funny because we've got different forms of hunting on two different kinds of deer here. So it depends what weapon you're using and what animal you're going after.
So you're practicing with your rifle and your bow pretty much year-round, aren't you?
Yeah, I am now. I'd say when I first started hunting, it was kind of like one of those things where, it's hunting weekend, so go ahead and this week we'll go get everything sighted in. Where now I'm more keen to just go down to the range whenever a nice day. You got enough nice days throughout a year and nobody will be there, and go ahead and shoot. Actually, my husband was going to go shoot sometime today his new gun that he got. I can't remember what it even was. He just kind of snuck in the house yesterday and put it together. So he didn't really want me to see, I guess. So it was, I don't know what it even was. And so he was going to go shoot that today. So we go back and forth to the shooting range just kind of whenever you get a nice day, go ahead and go down there. You really just, as my word of advice, you don't want to be that person that shows up the Friday before the season opens on Saturday and try and get everything sighted in. It just gets to be a mess, and you might not get it done in time, and there's tons of people there. So my word of advice is always practice throughout the year. Even if you're not that great, you got to just start sometime, and then you have plenty of time to get better and plenty of time to get your weapon and your optics all sighted in and ready to go.
Yeah, it's important to start at least 6 months early. Now April, I'll start going to the range in April. And I'll go once a month, and nothing really changes on my rifles or my I shoot a crossbow now. Nothing really changes, but I still want to, get comfortable with it, get the muscle memory going, and just, get that comfort feel back, because I know people, especially in Wisconsin, the 9-day rifle season, they don't touch their rifle, but the weekend before they'll go out and say, "Oh yeah, I gotta shoot, make sure it's still on." They'll take 1 or 2 shots and shoot it, and that's it. And that's okay. I had one friend this year, he missed 2 does, and he goes, "What the heck's wrong with my rifle?" And unbeknownst to him, something had come loose, and had he checked it, he wouldn't have missed those 2 does. I mean, and everybody thinks, "Oh, it's fine." But it isn't. So everybody, 6 months before your season's going to open, make sure you get to the range, have everything checked out. That gives you plenty of time. Hey, if the mount's screwed up, if your crosshairs, something happened to your crosshairs, they've come apart, who knows? It doesn't really matter. You can get it fixed, and then you can get back out there and get dialed in. And we owe that as ethical hunters to the game that we pursue.
Exactly. And I think there's a lot of nice days leading up into the fall to get out. There's no excuse, why you can't get out. We have a lot of nice days in the summer and early fall, and it's just nicer to go when no one's really there. Take your time and get everything to shoot correctly before you go out, and then you won't have anything to worry about the morning of.
So we got the deer, so we got the doe, and we donated that to the food bank there in Pierre. So what was up next?
Next was the archery whitetail that I shot. I think it was on November 9th. It was a kind of a weird day because it was actually fairly warm for, being early to mid-November. And I think I got up and I went to the Y and I worked out for several hours and came home and got ready to go out. And I told Ben I was going to go back out. And and sit in the tree stand for the evening since the weather was about to turn that night, actually. So that was why I really wanted to get out, because it was nice. And so I get out there and I sit for a long, long time. There was no wind, which is extremely eerie if you live where I live. You can hear everything, which normally there's ripping wind all the time. But I just kind of sat and I heard something in the trees or kind of messing around, and in my head I never saw it. So I was like, oh, squirrels or mice or rabbits running around, pheasants, that just, you don't want to get your hopes up too many times, and usually that's what it is. But so I kind of just sat and waited, and then eventually I had about an hour and a half till I was to get down, and I just stood up, kind of stretched my legs just a hair, and all of a sudden when I was up, whatever was back in those bushes kind of thrashing around and moving around came out, and it was a doe, and then I saw there was a buck behind her. And the doe kind of caught me because I was really just kind of stretching my legs. I didn't expect them to get up and move towards me, so I couldn't move. And so stretching my legs, she caught me, and then kind of, looking at me after a while, bebopping her head around. I'm like, if you don't like what you see, just keep moving. So that's kind of what I was thinking. And then she kind of just started to trot off, like, yeah, let's get out of here. And I could finally kind of see him through the thicket because he kind of came out, and I could tell he was a big deer, but I hadn't seen any other deer that day, so I had nothing to compare it to. And then you start to second guess yourself. Well, do I really think he's as big as I think he is? And I didn't have much time to decide, because as soon as I was thinking about it, he started trotting off. So then I quickly grunted or just, got him to stop, and he was stopped behind a tree. And then I could get a look at his antlers a little bit. Then I figured as soon as he takes, 3 more steps out, I can see vitals, I'm ready to go. And sure enough, he didn't run off. He just kind of took a few little walking steps and stopped. And I was able to put the arrow in. And then I could watch him for so far, and there was no wind. So I heard something kind of hit what sounded like a snowbank, because it was a really warm day, but we had some snow in the thickets still. And I couldn't really tell. And so I was kind of impatient, because I'm like, oh, do I get down to a knock? Do I get down? So I kind of sat there for a while. I'm like, eventually after 10 minutes, I'm like, I'm just going to go check the arrow, because if the arrow is something completely, I thought everything went right, but you just always want to look. So I found the arrow right in the ground with a bunch of bubbles on it. So I was like, I think we're good to go. So I packed up my stuff and waited a little bit longer, and then eventually kind of followed the trail, which he ran through dirt a lot. So it was kind of like, well, I'll kind of skip over some of this around the corner where I saw him last, and picked up on the path again. And then he was probably about another 50 yards, 100 yards away from that. So I'd say he went about 250 total. And then I found him in the thicket and sent my husband a photo. And I'm like, I think I just shot a giant. And he goes, what? Because he was out hunting too in Pierre, and I was 2 counties north. I was like, I'm just going to send you this photo here. And I didn't know what to do. I just kind of sat there for a while. I'm like, I had never even seen hardly a whitetail this big on hoof anyway. Obviously people have their mounts in their house and you see them at bars and restaurants, but I just had never seen a deer on the hoof walk by me that it was this big. And I think he ended up being about 156, if I'm not mistaken. Now I can't remember, but I'm going to go get him officially scored. He's probably shrunk obviously a little bit since then, and then he'll have some deductions. But for me, that was a big deer. My biggest deer before that was around 136 was one that I shot. So this deer was a lot bigger than any deer I've ever shot. So I was super excited about it. I brought it back to Pierre. We took some pictures here because obviously I was by myself again. I was on another solo hunt. And so once we got him good to go, we got him processed, and we had all the meat back within a couple of weeks. We usually do our own processing, but we had a guy in town do it because I traded him some saddles that my parents had. We used to have horses, and he wanted some saddles. So he said, oh, I'll go ahead and get your deer meat processed for you. And so we did that. And then, yeah, since then I've had the head sitting in my living room. It's getting a full shoulder mount. So hopefully that will be here within the next several months. I picked out the mount that I wanted. I think I want a left turn based off of where my mule deer is at right now in my house. They'll kind of be both facing each other, but super excited to have the taxidermy done on it.
Well, heck yeah. So, okay, let's back up. So, was this public or private land?
This was private, the same stand and same spot I shot that doe in about a month earlier.
Okay, so you go to whitetail stand archery.
Correct.
Okay, so had you ever seen a buck of this caliber come out, in that area?
We had pictures of him from the last couple years, but he wasn't, I mean, he was a nice deer, but he definitely didn't have the mass that he had going into this season. I don't know if we had pictures of him from this year, but we had a few good ones on camera, and this was not the one that we were I was just after a nice looking mature whitetail. I didn't know he existed back in these woods. I know that we had pictures on him. I don't know if it was from that exact area that we had pictures of him, but he, like I said, he wasn't super huge the last 2 years, but he just put on a lot of mass within at least the last year.
Okay, so okay, tell me about your entrance and exit, because those deer weren't that far from your tree stand when you got up in your tree stand, but they didn't go anyplace.
No, and that's what was I got there pretty early, like I want to say 1 p.m. It gets dark. I think the sunset was by like 6 at that point in the year, 5:30 or 6. And I got in there. I mean, I parked far down, where I normally park, and was quiet because there was no crunchy snow or leaves. It was just kind of grass and dirt, so I could be kind of quiet sneaking in, and got up to this tree stand, sat down. I'm not quite sure where they were when I got there, but it didn't take long for me to hear that all day. It just sounded like squirrels bouncing around in the grass and some things kind of hitting sticks. Sometimes that's squirrels jumping from tree to tree. You don't really know. So that's what I thought I was hearing, just little critters doing their thing on a Saturday. So I just didn't really think even that was deer. That's why I got up and started just kind of stretching my legs. I got about an hour and a half here, and things are about to turn up, hopefully, with the front moving in, and it's getting darker now. And I didn't expect then when I was stretching that they would come out and decide to go someplace else.
Now, one thing when you mentioned, the change of temperature, anytime hunting the front end, the back end of fronts, is especially November 9th, is a deadly time to be in the woods. And, I remember talking with Bill Winke from Midwest Whitetails, and he says he'll never miss, a front, coming through, because he's killed some of his biggest deer just because he's in the right place. But with the front, it just increases the activity, and obviously you didn't spook the deer going in. And why didn't that doe, blow up?
I stood extremely still, and I basically held my breath. The wind, if there was any, was somewhat going her direction, if I remember, but not fully. So I don't know if she thought maybe she was smelling somebody on the other side of the trees somewhere. There's the rancher. He goes, as he pleases throughout his day. So maybe she was just kind of like, he might be over there. Let's just get out of here. He didn't full out just go crazy, but I'm not quite sure if the rut kind of, maybe with those, they're a little different too. Because that was pretty much full blown rut time about, like I said, November 9th, and the front moving in. It was about to get cold and stormy, and a lot of snow, I think, moved in, and frost. But I'm not quite sure why she didn't, but she did kind of trot off like she wasn't going to be hanging around anymore. That's for sure. Tail up, but didn't haul, like full out haul her butt over to the other tree patch. But he was following wherever she was going, and I was just happy I was able to stop him, because sometimes you can't stop him. If the doe's going, he's going too.
That's for sure. And just, I got one friend, he doesn't even grunt. He just says buck, he yells it, and anything, to get their attention. And they go, okay, where'd that come from? Where is it? I'm not going to move until, I zero in on that and figure out where the heck the danger's coming from. Who taught you how to do that? Was that Ben?
Yeah, and I didn't grunt, because I knew that whatever, and that's funny you mentioned your friend, because I knew whatever I had to do had to be kind of obnoxious. And not just, like, and then he probably just be like, whatever, I don't care about that. But it was loud. I almost had to shout, like, and so he just stopped and like, what the heck was that? And kind of looked around, like I said, and then I was able to kind of zone in on him before he came out of that, behind that. It was like a big cottonwood was in my way. I'm like, okay, as long as he doesn't just sprint now here, he can just give me a couple forward steps and kind of look around. And that's when I shot, and then I could see the arrow, but I still always second guess myself. I'm like, oh, I hope I didn't completely miss. Well, you saw it go through the vitals, but you still have that, like, maybe I just thought I saw it go through the vitals. But anyway, it was an awesome shot on the deer, one of the best shots I've ever put on a deer in my entire life, and I think I did everything correct. It couldn't have worked out better for what it could have happened if he would have just taken off running.
And you didn't get, big buck fever or see the horns and go, oh my God, well, that's the biggest deer I've ever seen or whatever. You stayed the course and drilled it. Good for you.
Thank you. Well, and I've had that happen before, and it's mostly, sometimes it's where I don't have enough time to even react or to get worked up, and that's what happens. I think that's what happened that time, but I've had times where I've gotten worked up because you sit and you wait for this deer to do what you want it to do, and I get a little more worked up then. But I think this was more like, oh, well, I need to make this happen right now. I don't have time. I don't have time to get jitters. And so I got a lot more jacked up and excited once I found him laying there in the thicket than I did. I mean, I was still excited, but I was like, oh gosh, I'm glad I almost got caught. That was more of my thought when I shot him, instead of, I could see that left side of him because that's the direction he was walking. That I think it's his G2 on the left side is super heavy. And I knew, I was like, that's more than 8 points, but I hardly had time to count. I was just kind of, everything was a blur. And I'm like, that looks like a nice deer. So I'm going to go ahead and harvest this one.
How far away was it?
Probably about 15 yards. It's not far, maybe even less. So I just had my 20 on, the 20 pin on, and it could have been 10 to 15. I mean, they're just right down below. And so no more than 20 for sure. So it's pretty up close and personal.
Well, you got to be proud of yourself because you did a lot of things right. And my final question, how the heck did you get him out of the woods? Could you drive right up to him?
Oh my goodness, that was a chore. So once I was done gutting him, it was a beautiful evening. I wish I would have had my husband just there if he was hunting some other place to take some pictures, because the sunset was beautiful and the colors, and you could kind of tell that it was a storm was kind of moving in. It would have been beautiful. But I drug him out onto their ranch road, which I don't know how I did this, but I kind of, obviously you grab the head and you kind of take a step and you bring the antlers to your chest and you kind of keep moving and inching back. I had to do that for like 30 yards. And then once I got him kind of underneath the fence, I called up the rancher and he was more than happy. And we talked about it. And I gave him I always get him a Christmas present. So then I was giving him his Christmas presents that I had with me in the vehicle. And we were just chit-chatting, and he helped me. And thank goodness, because that deer, he's like, I might have to go get the backhoe. It was just a big-bodied deer. I don't know how we got it I had a Ford Escape. It since has rest in peace, but since December of last year. But that vehicle carried, I think, 8 dead deer in its lifetime. So I don't know how. I was on his last run then, but we got it back to Pierre and got her out, and that was that.
Well, heck, that's just, good for you. I mean, that's this exciting. Here you are again, by yourself, world-class deer, no panic, just do what you needed to do, took care of business. And, that's exciting. And that just, shows me the type of preparation you do, because there was no second guessing. Yeah, you second guess yourself. And to a man and woman, a lot of people go, gee, that looked good. And, everybody goes to their video camera and goes, okay, let's check the shot. Let's check the shot. And, unless they just drop, if I'm rifle hunting, the best shot is when they drop out of the scope, because they're done. I mean, they're not going anywhere. But with my crossbow and everything, I haven't had one, drop out of my, my red dot. They all run off, even though I've double loaded them, and they're gonna go someplace. And you always think, okay. And I still get excited today after the shot, and I go, oh, okay. And people
I was jacked up. I don't want to downplay the fact that I just was kind of worried. I'm like, oh no, I hope everything worked out okay. No, now I got to figure this out. So, but once I did figure it out, it was all good. I just wish Ben could have been there on the property. If he was hunting some other place, it would have made things a little easier. But that's okay. That was part of my goal this year, to be honestly a little bit self-sufficient with. That was the second time I've gone out archery hunting by myself and shot a deer. Actually, what's crazy is I shot an antelope in the same area the same day the year before, and that buck, same day, same stand. the year before. So I don't know if it's something about that day or what, but that's the 2 days I harvest both those animals is the same as the year before. And
I'd
so
stick with that.
I wanted to go out, yeah. I wanted to go out and get it done myself, and I know how to gut, which I just gutted the other deer, and I know how to quarter, and you make it work. For me, it's more about, I don't know why I have the survival mentality, but I think that's why I don't always get the buck jitters that some people do. I have the worst target panic. You put a bunch of dots on a block and put it in front of me, I can't hit very well. And Ben goes, you just can't hit circles. But he goes, you put you in front of a live deer, and it's either me or you. You know, I think that's maybe more of the mentality I have versus target shooting and shooting for competition, which I'm not that great at. And I'll fully admit, my husband will tell me I'm not very, very good at, but he goes, you can hit a deer just fine, but you struggle to hit the blocks.
It all works out. So now we got, what, 1 or 2 hunts left?
Just one. I had same place, but now we had the 6.5 Creedmoor, and it was rifle season. So this was like, I think, Thanksgiving weekend. So a few weekends later, the rut's in full force. Deer are everywhere. Ben and I both had a tag, and I was able to shoot an 8-point, a nice 8-point, with my rifle. And that would have been, I think, around November 25th or so. I can't remember the exact date. And that deer was a pain to get out. The Ford Escape had to go down a ranch yard and down into a pasture, and we about bottomed out. I lost my cell phone in the process, found it, broke the bumper off the back of the vehicle, and yeah, so it was quite a fun ride, fun trip, but we were ready to be home when it was all done.
No, that was on the same ranch?
Yes, yep. So I had two deer this year from that ranch, and then obviously the antelope was in a different county in the west.
So on strictly a spot and stalk with the rifle?
Yeah, I guess you could say that, because we weren't in a blind or anything, but we kind of went to a hilltop and was watching a group that were all running around, pushing each other everywhere, does and bucks, and so it was kind of a show, like with turkey season, it's kind of what it was. And so we just kind of sat there and waited for, Ben had one he had his eyes set on, so he was excited about, so he went ahead and shot his he has a silencer. So what's nice about that is he shot his, and it kind of didn't really upset any other bucks and does in the group. They just kind of kept going about their day. And so I was able then to zero in on the 8-pointer that I was wanting to shoot. So and it all worked out in the end. So yeah, we had 2 deer in the back of that vehicle. I forgot about that.
Well, no wonder you lost the bumper. My goodness.
Well, we had the one deer in the back, and then the other one we were going to go find, and there was just big holes and everything. Oh yeah, that vehicle, rest in peace. It blew out its 3rd cylinder in the middle of December, and it was a 2011, but we had put it through a lot of work and a lot of things that you don't put a 4-cylinder engine vehicle through.
Now, do you have a truck now? Have you guys decided to buy a truck?
Well, we have the Tahoe, because Ben's theory is the Tahoe is just a pickup with an enclosed back. And
Right.
so I was like, well, and we take the seats out. So it was kind of nice because we have our dogs and we go somewhere, or you don't want anything to freeze in the back. So I think that was his theory. He goes, I might get a pickup at some point, but right now the Tahoe is just fine. And then I actually bought my parents' Expedition. So we both have 2 big black SUVs that are very similar. So that's what I'm driving a 2013 Expedition now. I call it Sallie Party of 8 because I can fit 8 people, but it's usually just me.
All right. Hey, if it works for you, I'm happy for you. Yeah, and I'm happy with my Toyota SR5.
4Runner?
Yeah, 4Runner. I couldn't be happier with that. I lifted it up and put some Nerf bars on it and the Rhino Chaser in the front, and that's about all. That's all I'm going to do with it, because I can, I got some pretty good tires on it, and I can go any place I want to go with it. So, Sallie, what's the plan for 2020, given that we're going to have hunting seasons and all that?
Well, our first order of business, I think, is this weekend is archery opener for turkey. So we're going to kind of go around the area within a few counties because it's statewide with the archery tag. And we just got them in the mail, I think, on Friday. And so we'll go around and see what's going on with the turkey situation here. We were going to go to Wyoming, but that kind of with the whole travel and people we were going to be, with and all that, I kind of just was better maybe for another time. So we decided against that. So this turkey hunting will be in April and part of May. And then in May, I actually drew a tag for Fort Thompson paddlefish snagging, and that's like the Mecca. It takes about 4 or 5 years to draw. I think it took me 4 years this time. Ben got one last year, and they just have the big bad paddlefish down there at Fort Thompson Dam, and they only do maybe a few hundred tags. So it's a lot less people you have to kind of fight, or not saying fight with, but be next to, and just otherwise it's just the space is limited with at Gavin's Point. But at Fort Thompson, you have more area to fish, and there's a lot less people to tag. So May, that will be what my May consists of. Besides training on Saturdays, I'll probably be headed down there. One good reason why we like to head down to Fort Thompson is because it's only an hour and 10 minutes, so we could make a day trip out of it, whereas Yankton is like 4 hours, so it's harder to make a day trip out of that. So that's what we're doing in May. And June, there's a paddlefish season I just applied for. That's archery paddlefish, so it's bow fishing, and that's back down at Gavin's Point in Yankton. And then July, August, kind of practice bow shooting. That's predominantly triathlon months into September. And then archery deer season would be the next thing on the list as far as the fall comes.
Well, as always, Sallie, it's just a pleasure to just chit-chat with a lady that wasn't too long ago, was just, getting started, getting the confidence to go out there and mix it up by herself. And now, you could go anyplace. You could go to Alaska and be successful. No doubt about it.
Well, I certainly hope to maybe get up to Alaska one day. I think caribou is on my list before elk. I don't know. I always think caribou look really cool. So I maybe someday can get up and get one of those either in Canada or up in Alaska.
Well, all I can say about caribou, and I've been fortunate to hunt, a couple of different species of them, is that it's just like hunting antelope, except that you're wet all the time.
I can see that. I can definitely see that. But I think I don't know how they taste. I don't know if I've ever had one. I've tried a lot of different things, but I don't know if I've ever had caribou that people have brought back from anywhere. You just not a lot of, it's kind of a hard trip to get on and to go to. So you don't just elk, every once in a while somebody brings elk back or they go to hunting in the hills. But I don't know if I've ever eaten a caribou before. I've eaten rattlesnake and mountain lion, but I don't know if I've eaten that.
They eat lichens. So, it's not the most nutritious food for them and forage for them. So it's interesting. I guess I'd say the caribou I've had, the backstraps and stuff, because you have to travel so far, then you have to freeze it, then you have to bring it home. And so preparation is the key thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing I can say about that. And other people would say, hey, it's great. I know guys that would drive up to Montreal and then they fly back and they never freeze it. They keep it cold, and theirs were a lot better than if you froze it, in camp and then had to fly home 2,000, 3,000 miles. Makes a huge difference.
Yeah, something to keep in mind. Huh.
Yeah, makes a huge difference.
Interesting.
Well, thank you so much, and I look forward to our chit chat next winter to see how 2020 went for you.
Yeah, I would love to be on the show again. Hopefully, I have a successful season next year, and best of luck to you. I'm glad you're recovering from your surgery, and stay safe and stay healthy.
Well, that's our prayer for everybody who's listened to this. Just stay safe, and everything that we're facing, it's new. I'm 73 years old, and I've never seen anything like this. And so hopefully we get it on the other side, and life gets back to whatever the new normal is.
Certainly. Yeah, I can't wait.
Thank you so much again.
Yep. Thanks for having me.